Offer myself to thee.
Sorry about that, Rob.
No problem. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. And I do thy will always.
Okay, we got barely into chapter 3, more about alcoholism. And I think what we'll do is, since we're only a couple of paragraphs in, let's go ahead and just start at the very beginning again, Rob, if you want, and that way we kind of have that to have for today. And a couple of things. One, we're going to talk a lot of different things that are going to come up. Hopefully, most of them are they make sense to everyone. And if not, at the end of the meeting, please let's talk about them. And I also want to make sure that you understand what it is to be alcoholic, and that is the two symptoms. One is the physical allergy, and the second one is the malady of the mind. And we're going to explore some of that as we go along. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started, Rob.
Perfect. We're on page 30, everybody. More about alcoholism, chapter 3. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. Personal experience was that I mocked people that said that they were alcoholics. I felt like that nobody could define what a real alcoholic was. And when I would ask, trying to be kind of a bit of a smartass in the meetings, like, so what makes you an alcoholic? I got the responses I got from the fellowship meetings that I was in were, well, I was drinking alone, or I got a DUI, or I drink excessively, and they would give some amount, or there would be some kind of calamity that would have happened in their lives. And certainly all of those are as a result of their drinking and as a result of their being alcoholic. But to define for themselves what it was to be a real alcoholic, they just kept missing the mark. And therefore I kept kind of being emboldened, if you will, to continue, trying to say I could drink like other people, et cetera, et cetera. And that really kind of ties into that next statement here. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. I want to talk about this. There's two big obsessions in this book, and one of them is this one. And this is that when they talk about an obsession, this one is that they would be able to control and enjoy their drinking just like a normal people. And it is amazing at how much this drives you to continue to drink and also to continue to fail. Once you are an alcoholic, this is impossible to achieve. You might get one good night out of many, or one good day out of many, where you were able to kind of stop your drinking at 2, 3, or 4 drinks and somehow keep your composure, somehow not turn into, in my case, I was not a happy drunk. I was a somber, more, I would just call it ugly, and kind of just, I was just a bad drunk. I just said things that I just shouldn't have said, etc. But I wasn't one of those kind of happy. I always make the thing is that I love you, man. I put my arm around my friends and saying, slobbering on them and that type of thing. I was more surreal. I mean, I'm not talking surreal. Trying to think of the word, but anyway. This is a big deal, and it's one that everybody needs to understand. It also is one of the things that we don't talk about, and that is that the obsession of drinking is not a symptom of alcohol. Okay, that That defense against the first drink, yes, that's a malady of the mind. The physical allergy is once you start, you can't stop. That's not an obsession there. The obsession is, in this case, is that you are going to be able to control your drinking, and it just doesn't happen. And some people get it, and they find a higher power, and I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit here, but they find that inner strength and they're able to rise above, but others just don't. And they end up drinking themselves to death, or they drink themselves to an earlier death than what they normally would have had. So it is important to kind of get this. I've highlighted that, and I just want to make sure that we make sure that we make that a heavy emphasis on that. Rob?
Beautiful. Thank you, Leo. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better.
Yeah, over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. And there's a couple of vectors here. One is that this disease to a person is a progressive disease. It gets worse and worse. The older we get, the longer we drink, the more we drink, et cetera, et cetera. And there is actually some biological reason for that. Your metabolism begins to slow down the older we get. So in essence, there's some kind of truth to this from a scientific standpoint. And that is that you're less able to process the alcohol in your body as you age. But I want to jump back up at the beginning here. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is a very personal and private thing that happens to you and you alone. This isn't you just wanting to be a part of the group and just raise your hand and say, I'm an alcoholic. It's interesting when you first say it. I think sometimes people say it just to feel like that they belong to a group, but they really don't understand it. They really don't believe it. But it's that one time when you finally have that epiphany, that moment when you actually sit back and acknowledge the fact that what everybody has probably been saying to you for weeks or months, if not years, you finally say enough is enough. The calamity, the maladies, the debacles, all of those things that have happened to you and others around you in your life during your drinking career, you finally say enough is enough, and I am in fact out of control, and I'm an alcoholic. It is something that is a absolute requirement for you to be successful in moving forward in your journey to being a sober and recovered alcoholic at this point. Okay, and yes, you never ever recover your control of your drinking. And that's another distinction of being an alcoholic. You just never get that control back. You can stay off of alcohol for a period of time. And I went out, and when I would deploy with the Marine Corps, there was an edict that was no drinking allowed, especially in a combat zone. We just didn't do it. I was a rule follower, and I would white knuckle it through those 6 or 7 months that I would be deployed at that point. And then as soon as I got back, there would be a short period of time, maybe a week, maybe 5 days, maybe 3 days, somewhere in there where I was able to just drink a little bit at a time and kind of stop at that point. But I could feel the hunger, and I'm going to use that word because it's my own personal one, but I could feel the hunger for that next drink, that desire, that overwhelming, I have to have that next drink. And it just continued to just kind of, like I've also described it as, just turn the volume up, okay? And it just kept kind of getting louder and louder until I finally succumbed to it. And then there I was drinking 6, 8 beers, or I was drinking multiple drinks of whatever alcohol I could get my hands on. And there I was, drunk and just a mess and barely able to just hang on. And yeah, I thought I would be able to regain control. I can still remember in my mind, I got back from a deployment. I was taken to a barbecue restaurant and I was handed a Heineken. And I can still remember standing there holding that bottle of beer. And I thought to myself, literally, I thought to myself, I've been off of alcohol for 7 months now. This is going to be my first drink after being gone as long as I have. I'm finally at the point where I'm going to be able to drink just like everybody else that's standing around me at that moment. And sure enough, for that brief period, that one time at the barbecue restaurant, I did drink like others. And I was like, yep, I got it. Nope. In just a couple of days, I was right back to where I was, and it was bad. So I can tell you to my personal experiences that I have less control, and it just kept bringing me down. I got to a point, and I'll just finish with this, that when I was drinking, immediately I would feel this guilt, this remorse, and an anxiety that I knew that things were going to go wrong, and sure enough, they did. So this is a very important statements there. And over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. Couldn't be more true. Rob?
Leo, I love the fact that we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we're like other people has to be smashed. We have to smash the idea within ourselves that we can never safely take that drink. We go into the fellowship and, we give out 24-hour chips, and people come in, they're mangled, their eyes are all red, their life is falling apart around them. They give up the alcohol for a few weeks, they get their 1 month chip, 2 month chip, they might get their 3 month chip. Things are starting to look a little bit better. Everybody's saying, hey, you look fantastic. You're the color is back in your face. Your life is getting back together. You got a couple of dollars in your pocket, and then they go out. It's that little bird or that melody of the mind that says, you know what, this time I'm not a real alcoholic. I haven't had a drink for a while. That's why it's so important that we realize, and this is what the whole idea of the big book is up until this point, is to teach us about alcoholism. The mental twists that are going to come up that they're going to talk about. We have an allergy, that we cannot control the amount that we take. We have a malady of the mind that tells us that, you know what, you can take that first drink, you'll be fine. Okay. You know what, remember, we are against defense against that first drink. Our mind is a strong thing, and it'll tell us anything to get us to take that first drink. Okay, and when we take that first drink, then the allergy kicks in, and then we're off to the races. Okay, that's why it is so important that we realize we concede to ourselves. I can't take a drink because I have an allergy. And if I take any alcohol whatsoever, it's going to trigger that allergy, and then I can't control the amount. We have to smash that idea. So this book talks about the same things over and over and over again. So do I, because I'll smash on that idea until everybody understands it and recognizes it.
Absolutely.
We're like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there have been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet.
Technically, it still hasn't done so. There's a couple of medications out there that can actually numb or dumb down the reaction and the feeling of when you're drinking, but they do not keep you from drinking. So and even still, once you're off that medication, as I understand it, everything comes back and then some. So pretty self-explanatory there. We'll keep going, Rob.
Yeah, as my friend Gary always says, once a pickle, always a pickle. We can't go back to being a cucumber. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. by every form of self-deception and experimentation that will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing an ability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people.
Yeah, and this is just reinforcing that idea that somehow, someday we can drink like others, and we just can't do it. And man, I can tell you, I can't even tell how many times I tried this, how many times I convinced myself, how many times. I mean, I even reached out to people and said, I'm going to do it this time. I mean, can you imagine talking to somebody else, telling them before you take that first drink, as you've ordered it and everything, and you're looking over at their eyes and they're looking at you like, are you really about to start drinking? And you go, I got it this time. I've got it this time, and looking at them when they look back at you. And I can still remember a brother that I did that with. I've done it with my wife a number of times. I've done it with my two boys, and there again, it's just all I'm doing is saying, hey, give me permission to drink. It's what I was looking for, and I was looking for that kinship of somebody going, yeah, Dad, it's okay, or yeah, brother, or yeah, husband, it's okay to drink. Just we'll watch out for you. I was putting the responsibility on somebody else, and it just wasn't there. And I tried hard. I really tried, and to no avail, Rob?
Okay, we're on page 31.
Mhm.
For anybody that just joined us, here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylum. We could increase the list ad infinitum.
Yep, absolutely. And I've tried every one of these about. The difference being is that I've never gone to a treatment center. I almost did once, and I did the intake, but when I realized what was going on, I decided that I was not going to go ahead and do that. I did do a day program, but it was also, all it did was help convince me that I was an alcoholic and I was able to drink like other people, which really wasn't the truth. And part of it was because I heard other people's stories, and then I did these comparisons and stuff, and I said to myself, well, I'm not that bad, so if I'm not that bad, I must not be alcoholic. But not drinking during business hours, only drinking at home, never having it in the house, et cetera, the different types of alcohols, and saying, okay, I'm only going to drink beer and never going to drink, bourbon or scotch or something like that. It just never works. And alcohol is alcohol is alcohol. And bottom line is I would figure out a way to get myself drunk, become this kind of nasty, as I've told you before, I was never a happy drunk, and do and say things that were just abhorrent. So anyway, that's just a great list of things, and everybody, I think, here to a person can relate to part of it, if not all of it. And it is just as a thing here too, is that even back in the 1930s, people were doing the exact same things that we do today in order to come up with some excuse to either drink or not drink, and then turn around and create the debacles that come with it. Rob?
We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take you long to decide if you are honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. Oh, you're on mute, Leo.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it will not take long for you to decide if you are honest with yourself. And this is one of the first times that they talk. I mean, we've mentioned it before, but this is one of the first places that we talk about being honest with yourself. You have to begin to start working with yourself well before you are working with others. But here's this point: you have to be honest. You have to be honest. And yeah, taking a trip, not taking a trip. Yep. So the pure honesty, and this isn't just, again, I'm not talking about the day that you're sitting in front of a group of people in a fellowship and raise your hand and say, I'm Leo and I'm an alcoholic. You have to really believe it. Saying it and admitting to it, yep, that's part of the process. But it is that very private, very personal thing that happens. And honesty is absolutely key to all of this. You have to be honest. And you know what? Being honest with this group in this fellowship right now, I will tell you this, is that you are amongst peers, friends, and colleagues. We are all, to a person, having had gone through this very thing. And so I guess what I would say with you, and I mean this in the most sincerest way, but your secret is safe with us. So if you feel like you need to admit it in this group, please do. But that is a requirement as we go along. Rob?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about a couple of Marty Mann, one of the first women in AA. She wasn't the first woman to get sober, but she's considered one of the first women that stuck around. Her story is Women Suffer Too, page 200. Her idea of controlled drinking was have 2 drinks a day for 6 months. And if you can do that, you could control your drinking. The other one is, of course, go to a bar and just, have a couple of drinks and leave and see if you can keep doing that, And the thing is that with Marty Mann's test, if you miss a couple of days, you can't double up. So it's frustrating at times about that one. Though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. We have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period because of an overpowering desire to do so. Here is one. Do you want me to read the story, or
Yeah, let's talk just for a second, because one of the things I want to talk about, and that is, it's part of this. So it's not the only reason, and I experienced a little bit of this. Young people have a really difficult time with coming to terms with their own alcoholism and stopping drinking. And the reason why is because they look around at a lot of people that are older and that they are, they've got 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, whatever it might be, but they look around and go, my gosh, I'm only 28 and I mean, no way can I stop drinking at this point in time in my life. Yet I can tell you, to a person that might be in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, when they look back on their lives, they wish they had stopped drinking when they were 28. So there's a couple of things working here, especially for young people. And I'm not going to consider myself a young person, except for the fact that I'm going to tell you that I was in a group where I was the second youngest person. And this was just a few years ago. It was an incredibly senior group of men and women. And it was a special group of men and women. They were all either aviators, air traffic controllers, or they were flight surgeons or flight attendants. And they had to have just a specialty group that came together. It's called Birds of a Feather. And they are an official, AA group out there. But the point I want to make here is that they were an older group, and I'm telling you, men and women into their 90s were in this particular group, and I was just in my early or late 40s at the point in time. It was late 40s, and I thought to myself, there was a couple of 75-year-olds, and I'm using that as close enough, that had 10 years of sobriety, and I would do the math and I'd go, wait, they got to drink until they were 65. Why can't I get to drink until I'm 65 and then stop? Can you imagine what my brain was doing in that I was trying to convince myself that I could still drink for another 20 years, for example, and then stop and then say, okay, now I'm going to, really do this. I mean, no, the way it goes. But I just want to bring that up because part of this is that it's hard for anyone to stop drinking, no matter what your age, but it seems to be especially hard for younger people. And I kind of put this in as a commercial break, is that if you get the chance and you can grab somebody in their late 20s, early 30s, for example, which is usually the first part of where I start seeing a lot. There's a few that are in their younger years, in their teens and early 20s and stuff. But if you can grab them and get them to stop drinking at that point in time, just think of how much better their life is going to be and how much better their health is going to be. Because I drank until I was just a year ago, and I still don't know what health calamities I'm going to experience because of my drinking career later in my life. I just don't know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Hopefully I got it in time that it's not going to be, what gets me. But nonetheless, I just bring that up. So let's go ahead and let's read through this story, and then we'll talk a little bit more. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he would get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatsoever. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. Then he fell victim to a belief, which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months, he was in a hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital meantime. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem which money could buy was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years.
Okay, and this is just one of 1,000 examples of people that have been able to stop for a period of time, let's say 6, 7 months, or let's say it was 20 or 30 years. Nonetheless, you still have the disease. We can also, you can put any kind of thing in that you want in there. Unfortunately for this particular person, he was unable to stop when he started again, and it was the end of him. But one of the things I wanted to highlight here, and I call this, I wrote in the side of my book, and it's called The Big Lie. And that is, then he fell victim to a belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. That's what I call the big lie. It's one that we tell ourselves over and over again in any kind of scenario that we can. So I just want to bring that up as a highlight. But other than that, I would say that this is one of 1,000 different examples that we could talk about. And you all have a very similar example, I'm sure. Unfortunate. Rob?
This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could therefore drink normally. But here is a man who at 55 years found he was just where he had left off at 30. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we're planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol.
So true. And so a couple of things that I've underlined and highlighted. First thing I underlined is most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. Again, that is just a restatement of the big lie. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. And you could just go into again and again as much as you want, and you'd still not have as many times as that is. Then, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And that's there's no getting out of it. And then at the end here, if we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation. This is a private and personal thing that you do for yourself. It's not the, I'm stopping for my wife, I'm stopping for my family, I'm stopping for my job, et cetera, et cetera. This has to be that you have no reservation of any kind, nor lurking notion. And that is okay, I'm going to tell people that I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to tell people that I'm going to stop. But in the back of your mind, you know that you're going to figure out a way to either lie your way through it, hide your way through it, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point in time, after you think about it for a day or a week, you're going to find that you are going to try to drink again in private. And I tell you that because when I first started trying to come to terms with it, while I knew I was alcoholic, I knew that I could control it. And why not? I'd been successful in other endeavors in my life. Why not be successful in this? But there I was, lying and hiding my alcohol. And I've told folks about this before. My garage was my little, private place that I would hide bottles of alcohol of different kinds in different places, so that I could go out there seemingly going to be doing something, and then ultimately I'm just out there trying to take a drink, and then thinking that nobody knew. I can't begin to tell you how people know immediately that you've been drinking, either through the way you're talking, your behavior, your mannerisms, or they can just smell it on your breath. It's just, there's no way of getting around it. But again, just going to tell you that you are not immune to alcohol. No matter what you think, you're not immune to it. Rob?
Leo, didn't they call your garage Club Leo?
I might have called it Club Leo. Yeah.
Remember, we on page 30, 3 pages, we smashed the idea that we can ever safely take a drink. Why do we smash it? Because we have the allergy. Anytime we take alcohol into our system, it's going to set off a chain of events. We can't control the amount. So that's why there can be no reservation, no second thoughts. We make the decision, we go for it. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop, as he did, on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it, because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking 20 years.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you that I was an alcoholic even at that point in time in my life. I was spree drinking. I was regularly drinking. I was binge drinking. I was in the Marine Corps. And I can tell you that it was drinking was woven into the fabric of what it is to be a Marine. You worked hard and you played hard. And the more you drank was like a badge of honor. And can you imagine an alcoholic being in a supportive environment as that, with other men and women that were drinking as much or more than you? And some I can say we're not, but there were a lot of alcoholics, and some that would admit it and some that wouldn't. And even a close friend of mine, not Marine, but a close friend of mine, died of alcoholism here about 4 years ago. And I'll just tell you, it was devastating to see somebody at basically 50, 52 years old that just died because they could not get control of the drink. But I do want to highlight one thing, and this is just another statement or another way of saying it: because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired. That is another way of calling it the malady. All right. So just to kind of just give you something there to highlight, but that is another way of saying that this person has the malady. And believe me, if you don't have the malady by the time you're in your 30s, you definitely are going to have it shortly thereafter. I had it before I was in my 30s, and I just didn't. I just, thank goodness I was of physical shape, of good health, whatever. I was able to combat it to that point. But I can look back in my life and I can see debacles that I caused for all kinds of people and all kinds of family and friends. It's embarrassing to think that I lasted as long as I did. And what I mean by I lasted, meaning that I lasted in other people's lives, because I was surprised at how long they stuck with me. And I'll say really for no good reason. They were punished, and I was the punisher. Okay, Rob.
You know, the whole thing is, Leo, is that we don't know when we cross that invisible line. And because if we knew we were crossing it, we might be able to step back quicker. But you know, we cross that line and other people see it way before we do. You know, the frothy emotional appeal, which we read in the doctor's opinion, you know, seldom suffices. Why? Because we don't think we're as bad as everybody else does. I've got this under control. Well, as a friend of mine at another meeting always says, I got this disease. You know, to be gravely affected.
Yep.
To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time nor take the quantities some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large number of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it.
Yeah, it's just, again, it doesn't matter which population you're talking about, which sex of the population you're talking about, age, etc. The malady is the malady, the allergy is the allergy, and you get it at whatever point in time in your career of drinking that you're going to get it, whether you're young, female, male, etc. It is just something that is going to happen to you, and you know, all of us are different. So all of us are going to have different levels of thresholds that are going to be crossed as an alcoholic. And some of us, it's only a few drinks. Maybe it's because of our slight stature and size. Others, it's different because of just the way we process alcohol. It's, you know, people are just different, you know, biologically in that regard. And so there's just different levels. So I'm not singling out women or young people or old people or smaller people or larger people. You know, it doesn't really matter in my book. We're all susceptible of alcoholism in that regard. And you know, whether you want to say I've got the gene, if you want to call it that or what, I'm just telling you that, you know, try to have gotten me to stop at 28 years old. And I was, you know, living life with my hair on fire kind of thing with the Marine Corps. No way. Not only that, but I'd have people shouldering up with me going, heck no, Leo, you're going to drink right there with us. You're one of us, you know, keep it going. So, you know, try and get me to see it at that point, what my life would have been like had I stopped drinking earlier in my life. It's unfathomable, but I do want to say this. Thank God I was given a second chance, and I took it. Rob?
We're on page 34, everybody, right at the top. As we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, let him try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. If he is a real alcoholic and very far advanced, there's scant chance of success. In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remained sober for a year or more, becoming serious drinkers again later. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year. Some will be drunk the day after making their resolutions, most of them within a few weeks.
Absolutely. A couple of notes here. You look back and you feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could have quit. Sure, all of us have, you know, with some regret can look back at our drinking career and say, okay, that's probably the point when I should have stopped drinking, you know, and yet I didn't. The other thing I want to kind of bring to a highlight here, and this is something that we hear a lot, and that is that when somebody goes and is in the program, Their sponsor says you're not going to make any major decisions for a year. Stay out of everything for a year, whether that be a relationship or a change of environment, or such as moving, a job, et cetera, et cetera. I do want to make sure that we make it clear the only reference to 1 year in the book is in this paragraph that we just read. All right, it's the only one that's in there. So this idea that you can't make major decisions in the first year of your sobriety, I think should be debunked. And you should just know that if you're making a major decision, then just do it with a clear head. If you're already sober at that point, whether that's 1 month in or 11 months in, guess what? You have already made a major decision, and it's a good one. I'm going to support that 100%. If you make another decision that's a big one, just do it with a clear head. And I think that with the other successes that you've had in your life, the way that you went through the problem solving and decision making process, do it the same way. That's all. That don't feel like that you cannot. And if somebody tells you you can't make a major decision for in your first year of sobriety, just know that that's something that is not supported by the program or the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. All right. It is just a reference to somebody saying that they took 6 months, they took 3 months, they took 5 years, whatever it might be. I mean, I'm even in a group called the Keystone Group. And there are some of the founding members that will tell you that you are a newcomer until you've got 5 years under your belt. Well, guess what? You're a newcomer until you feel like you're not. Okay. And whether that's in 1 year, whether that's in 5 years, or whether that's in 10 years, you're recovered, you're sober, and that there is no line that makes you either an old timer or a newcomer kind of thing. Yeah, if you're in your first 30 days, you're a newcomer. We get that. But there's a point in time where, you are sober and you're recovered. And in my mind, at that point, well, my personal belief is you're not a newcomer once you're recovered. You're recovered. Okay. There's no line there. So I don't say to myself, well, until I get 5 years in, I can't consider myself X, Y, or Z. So just as a point of reference. Rob?
Well, just remember, Eddie had 2 months of sobriety when he came to carry the message to Bill. 2 months. And he brought it to Bill. Why? Because Bill needed it. Okay. I'll tell a quick story. My uncle, really heavy drinker, alcoholic, whatever you want to call him. We don't like to pronounce other people or take other people's inventory, but he drank a lot. Somebody bet him that he could not quit drinking for 1 year. He quit drinking for that 1 year, collected his money, and guess what he used with that money? Alcohol. Was drunk for the rest of, for the next day. So yes, we can give it up for a considerable length of period at times. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We're assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish.
What a great paragraph. Here's another thing where there's a number of thoughts and ideas here. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. Okay, why are they unable to drink moderately? It's because of the allergy. All right, just as a reinforcement there. And then this is probably one of the most important sentences in this paragraph. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. I'm going to reinforce to this. This has to be an honest assessment of yourself, and a recognition that you're an alcoholic, and that you truly are being honest with yourself in a very personal and private way that you want to stop. And that is going to have to be, otherwise you are just fooling yourself, and and I'll say you're fooling yourself, but you're not fooling others. All right. And then depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose. All right. some people can do this in a non-spiritual basis. I think that most people that you will listen to in the fellowship, when they're describing themselves, if they've been able to stop for a period of time, and some people I've heard that they stopped drinking for 10 years, but never once picked up this book, and they found themselves right back in it, and worse than ever, they'll describe themselves as kind of that white knuckle drunk. They just kind of powered through it, and for whatever reason, were able to hold on. Most people don't get 10 years of sobriety that are like that. They only get a few months, if not maybe a year or two, but it does happen, and you are capable of doing it, but then find yourself right back in it, and worse than ever. And at the end here, this is the baffling feature of alcoholism, the malady as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone. You cannot stay away from that first drink. You cannot will yourself to just stop, right? You have to have help. And it is, again, you are powerless, meaning you are humanly powerless over the power of alcohol and what it has on you. You need assistance, which is that higher power. And we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I just want to make sure that we're describing this as the utter inability to leave it alone. You are powerless over it, and no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And that is another statement too. Most people coming into the fellowship will tell you that they really truly want to stop drinking. And for me, I didn't at first really truly want to stop. I knew I needed to, I knew I had to, but I didn't want to. And then I realized after I had a couple more debacles that I want to, that there is just no fun. There is no good. There is no winning over this. It's got me, and I have to stop. So it took me a while to get this last bit to admit to the fact that I truly wanted to. All right, Rob.
Yeah, and we'll just go back 2 pages where the same idea was given to us, in that the man of 30, he quit for 25 years, but was just as bad as when he first quit drinking. So, it's a point that they emphasize over again, is that, we can't stop. We're just as bad as the inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. How then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem.
Okay, we're going to actually kind of close things down at this point. Before we get into these different descriptions and everything, this is a good place, I think, for us to kind of stop here. But I want to kind of go back to what Rob just read, and this is important to being a sponsor. All right, you're going to have people coming to you saying, how do I know I'm an alcoholic? I was one of those. I kept asking that question. What is it that makes you an alcoholic? How do I know I'm an alcoholic? My story isn't your story. It's not as bad as this person over here. Well, maybe it's not, but it's your own bad. Okay. But this is something that's important for you as a sponsor when you're dealing with a newcomer that's trying to understand alcoholism. You're walking them through this book. They're starting to get the idea here at this point. And we think that we can, have them stop for a period of time. Say, okay, can you make it a week without drinking? Can you make it a month without drinking? Something like that. I mean, all of us can power through a day to a person. But this disease, and yep, you're absolutely right, Trish. It's progressive. And over time, you're going to find that you are going to drink more. But perhaps, even to the medical fraternity, there's a lot of doctors out there that, don't have the knowledge and experience and the wherewithal to be able to deal with people that are alcoholics. They just basically will tell you, and good for them, because if they're smart at all, they're going to say, hey, you need to get to be a part of AA and find a good sponsor that knows the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you take them through it. Well, we're going to do that. And when they ask, how then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? Well, they're going to answer that. That's the good news about this. We're not going to leave it to chance. All right. I'm going to open it up to Bill, if you would like to add a little bit to it, what we've read today. Sir.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, Leo and Rob. Good job. This is a real good chapter. Most people I've worked with said this is their favorite chapter. A lot of people really like this chapter. There's some real good information in here. Right in the beginning, it talks about the first line says we're unwilling to admit that we're real alcoholics. And then it talks about the obsession to control and enjoy our drinking. That, like Leo pointed out, that's impossible to do if you're an alcoholic. If I'm controlling my drinking, I'm certainly not enjoying it. And if I'm enjoying it, I'm completely out of control. And he talks about an obsession, illusion, insanity, and delusion. In the context of the book, all of those words mean the same thing. It means we believe something that's not true. And that's the point Bill's trying to get across to us here. And then on page 30, it's got the first step question. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. And you turn that into a question. Do I fully concede to my innermost self? And concede, all concede means to accept or acknowledge something. Until we acknowledge or until we accept the fact that we're an alcoholic, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. And it tells us this is the first step in recovery. That's just another way of saying you're powerless over alcohol, saying that you can see that you're an alcoholic. It basically means the same thing. And then it tells us we get worse, never better. At any considerable period of time, we get worse, never better. And like Leo pointed out, the older you get, the slower your metabolism is, and you start to metabolize alcohol and its byproducts slower and slower. It stays in your system longer and longer, and you get worse and worse. So even if you're not drinking, the disease is still progressing. And that's where I think these people came up with that saying that your disease is doing push-ups. So all that's trying to get across, that's just an analogy somebody made up to say that your disease does not get weaker just because you're not drinking. And then it talks about, on page 31, most people are not going to believe that they're in this class. And the only way that they can prove, they have what they call the Marty Mann test. And like was pointed out, you're supposed to have 2 drinks a day for like 6 months. And if you can do that, if you can control your drinking, you're probably not an alcoholic. And because most of us, as soon as we have 2 drinks, that's it. We're off to the races. That's to show you the physical part of the disease, the allergy. That's what that test was designed to do. And just the statement, control drinking, I think that's a big joke. Because if you have to control something, the only time you need to control something is once it's out of control. Social drinkers don't take tests to find out if they're alcoholics. And I got to tell you, if you got to take a test to find out if you're an alcoholic, you probably are. Otherwise, why would you be taking a test? Then it talks about this guy, the man of 30. And that's a real good story there. This guy had the physical part of the disease. When he drank, he had no control whatsoever. But when he wanted to stop and he stopped drinking, he could stay sober for 25 years. So he didn't have the mental part. When he drank, he was totally out of control. But once he stopped, he was able to stay stopped when he really wanted to. So he stayed stopped for 25 years. Then he started drinking again. And that whole time, he didn't know it. He believed, like Leo pointed out, the big lie. And this book says that almost every alcoholic has that thought in their head that if you don't drink for a long period of time, for some reason, my alcoholism will go away or go backwards. and then I'll be able to drink like a normal person. And he didn't realize that alcoholism does not go backwards. And when he started again after 25 years, he was unable to stop, and he drank himself to death. And then it talks about try leaving alcohol alone for 1 year. And like Leo pointed out, this is the only place in the book where it says to do something for a year. And I can't agree with Leo more on that you're not supposed to wait a year before you make any major decisions or anything like that. The book doesn't say that anywhere. In fact, step 3 says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. I don't know about anybody else, but that's a major decision for me. And if I can't do step 3 for a year, I'm going to have a real hard time getting a whole year. So then that's a myth that needs to be busted, that there's no place in this book where it says you can't do anything for a year. The only thing it says is try leaving liquor alone for a year, and that's to show us the mental part of the disease. If you can do that and not have any problems, you're probably not one of us. If you can do that and your brain is going crazy all the time, I need a drink, when's the year going to be up? Let me check the calendar. What? It's only 1 day. I got 364 days more to go. Oh my God. You probably are one of us. And what this chapter is doing is just giving us a breakdown of the insanity of alcoholism. And all the insanity of alcoholism means, it doesn't mean that I'm crazy. It just means that I have this insane idea in my head that I can drink and it'll be okay. That's what he's trying to show us in here. All right, thanks a lot for letting me share, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Bill.
Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, we will close with the serenity prayer and then open it up for questions, comments.
Okay, perfect, Leo. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thank you, Leo.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yep, absolutely. All right. You got a question? You can jump in. You're welcome, Pam.
Damn, Leo, you been on a roll today. Been talking about me again. You know, I've never met a brilliant alcoholic. But y'all just might be, you might be the smartest dumbasses I know. And that's why I have to keep coming back.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Gary, a lot. That's great.
Love y'all. See you
Love
next
too,
week.
man.
Love you, brother.
Got a jokes. I'm sorry. Got a hand over.
How's your day going, V?
It's good. Thanks for asking, Rob. I just wanted to jump in and kind of like thank you guys for studying this chapter. I just read it, from our Tuesday and Thursday study, and like Tony telling me to read to page 44, so I read it. And I'm gonna be really honest with you guys. I'm like very much that newcomer. Today is day 40, so I'm like, yay! Kind of like excited for 40 days because that used to be like my almost yearly thing that I would do this for Lent, right? So but it was always easy because it was like, oh, it's just for Lent, like there is end inside. And I'm not necessarily struggling with the desire to drink, but I'm kind of struggling with the with like the diagnosis and what does it mean? Oh my God, I can never drink again, etc. And like having read the pages, to be honest with you, like did not get me any closer to the diagnosis or to like feeling confident. I feel like but I also can share with you guys that I'm like not looking for ways to like escape and like find the reasons that I don't belong. So my friend who's been in the program and like in the fellowship for 16 years, she said she was 26 when she came in, so she was quite a bit younger. And she said her sponsor said, try it for a year and see how your life gets. So I'm kind of glad that today you guys like read this and kind of talked about for the newcomer, try it for a year and see how things are. Because even in the last 40 days, like I can see positive changes in my life. So I really appreciate like you, Rob, keeping me informed about these big book studies. Because what I'm trying to do is obsess less about the label and like, the diagnosis, and focus more on the positive. And I just kind of, you guys said that this is a good time to ask questions. So I would like to formulate a question and ask you guys, like, do you think that this is an okay approach for a newcomer, to where I focus more on like doing the program and staying sober and working with the sponsor and studying the big book, and just trust that more will be revealed to me? Because I definitely think that I have the obsession. I don't know if I have like the allergy of like wanting to take in insane amounts of alcohol, but in the last year especially, I feel like I have like the craziness of like, I had a bad day, my daughter pissed me off, I'm gonna have wine. And what I also really identify, and that's why I think that I probably am an alcoholic, is I identify with this, like, I very seldom set out on a couch on a Tuesday or a Wednesday thinking, I think I'm gonna have 3 glasses of wine and like half a pound of cheese and a bag of almonds. So like the crazy, and Rob, I see you on my screen, I don't see anybody else, so thank you for the chuckle, because you must have heard that before, where like the idea is like, I'm a lady, I work hard, I'm a single mom, I'm gonna have a glass of wine to relax. And next thing I know, I'm like marching to the kitchen, another handful of almonds, as all of this while I'm trying to lose weight, right? And another, like, brick of cheese and a glass of wine. And this is like, I mean, I'm embarrassed to share it, but like, if I can share it with you all, who can I share it with? In the last, I don't know how many months, there was like 2 or 3 incidences where at least I was like honest with myself. By glass 2, I was like, F that. And I like glass 2 in one hand, the bottle in the other. Cause I'm like, why the hell get up from the couch? Like, I already gave up the pretenses of I'm just gonna have 2. So that's messed up, and I know it. And one thing that I'm doing for myself is not looking for reasons not to believe, but like holding on to the small signs that I know are messed up, you know? So I'll shut up, and if anybody would be kind enough to like kind of chime in, because obviously the second guessing, the obsessive mind has me second guessing, like, am I doing it right? Should I just like drop on my knees and be like, I'm an alcoholic? Or is it okay to like, anyway, zip, mute, and listen, V.
I'll let Leo speak first.
Well, with V, I'm going to say that, one of the things, by allowing yourself to have a good sponsor, getting into the book, attending these book studies, the book studies are great, because if you just read the words, they don't necessarily have the same meaning unless you've got somebody that's going to try to explain what something is being, how it's being said. And what I mean by explaining it, I'm not talking about me giving you